Sophia's hands shook violently as she clutched the eviction notice, her face draining of all color. Behind her, my son Thomas stood frozen like a statue, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. "You can't just sell the house from under us." Sophia's voice cracked with panic as she waved the paper frantically. "This is our home." I, Margaret Wilson, once banished to the dilapidated pool house behind my own family estate, simply folded my hands in my lap and smiled. "I didn't sell your home," I replied, my voice as calm as still water. "I sold mine." And in that single moment, the mother who had been silenced, the widow who had been forgotten, and the rightful owner who had been treated like an unwanted guest, reclaimed everything without ever having to raise her voice. But before I dive deeper into this story of quiet justice, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Whether you're in New York, California, or somewhere across the globe, I'd love to hear from you. This tale of standing up for yourself might just change how you view family dynamics forever. "Mom, please remember to text before you come in," he said to me that day 6 months earlier, as if I hadn't raised him within these very walls for 30 years. The weight of those words hit harder than the morning sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows. My son Thomas, whom I had nursed through childhood illnesses, driven to countless baseball practices, and supported through college, now treated me like an intruder in the home my late husband James and I had built from the ground up. "Mom, just text first, okay?" "It's about boundaries," Thomas said without even looking at me, too busy arranging fruits for the brunch he and Sophia were hosting. I stood with my hand still on the pantry door, the same pantry I had stocked faithfully for decades. The cool brass of the handle felt both familiar and suddenly foreign under my fingers. Sophia glided into the kitchen, arranging her designer plates and artisanal napkins for their guests. "The pool house is actually perfect for you anyway, Margaret. So much more manageable for someone your age." The pool house, a 600-square-foot structure originally intended for summer guests and storing pool equipment. Now my designated living quarters since Thomas and Sophia had helped me downsize 6 months after James passed away. I smiled politely, but the smile never reached my eyes. My gaze drifted to the custom tile flooring I had personally selected with James 15 years ago when we renovated. The house that held every memory of our marriage, our family, our life together, reduced to their house and my pool house. Later that day, during the lavish brunch on the terrace, I heard Sophia's voice rise above the chatter. "Everyone, this is Thomas's mother Margaret. She lives in our pool house. We converted it for senior living. Isn't that thoughtful?" The guests nodded approvingly, complimenting Sophia on her generosity. "It's like having a built-in grandma apartment," one of them said cheerfully. I sipped my water silently, cutting my frittata into perfect little squares that I barely tasted. The sun warmed my shoulders, but something inside me had turned ice cold. Not from age, not from grief, from clarity. That evening, as I returned to the pool house and washed my single teacup, I made a decision. They labeled my personal items while I was attending my garden club meeting. The storage bins in the laundry room were neatly organized when I returned. 3 separate sections, one labeled T for Thomas, another S for Sophia, and a small corner shelf with M. Not Mom, not Margaret, just M, like I was an afterthought in an alphabetized filing system. I stood in the doorway of the laundry room, staring at the labels. The towels I had purchased from Bloomingdale's during their semi-annual sale, the Egyptian cotton ones in seafoam green that James had said matched my eyes, were now folded into perfect rectangles behind a label that didn't even spell out my name. Sophia appeared behind me, her voice cheerful and rehearsed like a television host. "Oh, Margaret, I hope you don't mind the organization system. It just makes everything more hygienic." "Hygienic," I repeated, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. "Exactly," Sophia continued, adjusting one of the labels slightly. "Everyone has their own preferences for detergent and fabric softener. This way there's no confusion." I nodded slowly, wondering when my preference for lavender fabric softener had become a source of contamination. "It's all about respect," she added. though nothing in her tone suggested respect for me. That afternoon, I returned to the pool house to find a glossy brochure on my small kitchenette counter. Golden Sunset Village, luxury senior living for active adults. The brochure featured smiling, silver-haired couples playing tennis and eating in a dining hall that resembled a mid-tier hotel restaurant. A sticky note in Sophia's looping handwriting was attached. Just thought this looked interesting. No pressure, just planning ahead is self-care. I picked up the brochure, my fingers tracing the embossed letters. The paper was expensive, heavyweight stock, the kind used to sell luxury cars and timeshares. The kind designed to make you feel like you're being offered something special instead of being pushed aside. I read through the amenities: scheduled transportation to grocery stores, monthly birthday celebrations, weekly bingo nights, and 24-hour emergency call buttons. Everything a person my age might need if they were truly unable to care for themselves. But I had just turned 68. I still did yoga 3 times a week. I managed my own investments since James died. I grew prize-winning dahlias in the garden behind the pool house. Instead of throwing the brochure away, I carefully placed it in my desk drawer, right next to the property deed I'd taken from the safe deposit box last month. That evening, Thomas stopped by the pool house. He lingered awkwardly at the doorway, not quite crossing the threshold. "Mom, we should probably have a talk soon," he said, hands deep in his pockets. "About what, dear?" I asked, though I already knew. "You know, future arrangements. You're still sharp as a tack," he added quickly with a strained chuckle. "But Sophia and I were thinking, this property is a lot for you to manage alone." I looked past him toward the main house, the house where I'd raised him, the house that James and I had purchased when land in this area was still affordable, the house that had quadrupled in value since then. "You're right," I said softly. "It is quite a responsibility." Thomas looked relieved, as if I'd just made his job easier. If only he knew what I was actually thinking. That night after he left, I opened my laptop and navigated to the county property records website. I typed in my address and waited as the page loaded. Property owner, Margaret A. Wilson. No co-owners, no liens, no encumbrances. Current market valuation, $2.8 million. I smiled to myself in the glow of the computer screen. Perhaps it was indeed time for some future planning. This is our heirloom. Those 4 words echoed in my mind as I stared at my phone screen. I had been scrolling through Instagram when I came across Sophia's latest post. There, positioned artfully in their newly redecorated living room, was my mahogany writing desk. The same desk where James had written love letters to me during his business trips. The same desk where I'd helped Thomas with his college applications. The caption read, "Loving this antique writing desk in our refreshed living room." One of her followers had commented, "Gorgeous piece. Where did you find it?" Sophia had replied, "Family heirloom that needed the perfect spot. It found its way to us, found its way to them." As if the desk had grown legs and walked itself from the pool house while I was visiting my sister in Tucson. I zoomed in on the photo. They had painted it. My mahogany desk was now a chalk white with gold-painted handles, unrecognizable except for the distinctive curved legs that James had admired so much when we found it at an estate sale in Vermont. I set my phone down and walked to the window. From here, I could see into the main house's living room. Through the large bay windows, I watched as Sophia arranged flowers on my desk. No, on their heirloom. She took several pictures, rearranging the flowers slightly each time, likely for another social media post. That evening, I called my old friend Diana, the only person who still called me Maggie, instead of the more formal Margaret that Sophia had insisted upon since she married Thomas. "You saw it?" I asked, keeping my voice low even though no one could hear me in the pool house. "I did," Diana replied, her voice tight with indignation. "Maggie, it's like you're being erased from your own home, your own history." I didn't respond immediately. The truth of her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. "What are you going to do?" Diana asked after a moment. I looked down at the folder open on my small dining table. the one labeled property documents in James's neat handwriting. Beside it lay a printout of an email I'd received that morning from my attorney, Eleanor Santos. "I'm going to reclaim my narrative," I said finally. The next morning, I watched from my window as Thomas and Sophia left for their weekend trip to wine country. Their SUV pulled out of the driveway, packed with luggage and picnic baskets. Sophia had been posting about this trip for weeks. I waited until they were well down the street before walking to the main house. I still had keys, though they had changed the security code on the alarm system without telling me. Inside, the house smelled of Sophia's signature candles, overpriced ones that claimed to smell like rain-washed linen, but actually had a chemical undertone that always gave me a headache. I moved through the room slowly, taking note of everything that had once been mine but had somehow become theirs. The dining room table where we'd celebrated 20 Thanksgivings, the crystal vase my mother had given me as a wedding present, the collection of first edition books that James had lovingly acquired over decades. In the living room, I stopped in front of the desk. Up close, I could see they had filled the drawer with stationery featuring their monogram, T and S. My fingers traced over the white paint, catching on a rough spot where they hadn't sanded properly before painting over decades of rich history. I took out my phone and snapped a picture, not for social media, but for evidence. I was building a case, not for a court of law, but for myself. Back in the pool house, I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. I named it Reclamation. Inside, I saved the photo of the desk alongside pictures of other items that had mysteriously found their way to Thomas and Sophia. I then opened a new document and began typing, "Inventory of personal property of Margaret A. Wilson." The list grew longer than I expected. When I finished, I sat back in my chair and realized they hadn't just taken my things. They were trying to take my place in the story of this house, this family, this life, and I wasn't going to let them. "Mom, we paid for the new roof last year," Thomas stated confidently as we sat at the patio table during one of their mandated family dinners, scheduled for the third Thursday of each month as if I were a dental cleaning or car maintenance appointment. I looked up from my untouched salmon, my fork suspended midair. "No," I said simply. "I paid for it." Thomas and Sophia exchanged a look. That particular glance married couples share when they think an elderly relative is confused. I was becoming familiar with that look. "Margaret," Sophia said gently, as if speaking to a child, "we handled all the arrangements. Remember? The contractor came through us." "The contractor came through you," I agreed. "But the money came from me." $42,000 from my account. I have the bank statement. Another look passed between them, this time with a hint of panic. "Well, we've been handling all the property maintenance," Thomas continued. "The lawn service, the pool, the property taxes." I set my fork down, folding my napkin neatly beside my plate. "Thomas, I've maintained the auto payment for property taxes since your father died. It comes directly from my account. I've never canceled it." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken realizations. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Sophia finally said, her voice brittle. "We've been contributing so much to the household. The renovations, the landscaping redesign." "The renovations I never asked for," I said quietly. "The beautiful Japanese maple garden your father nurtured for 20 years that you replaced with that modern rock sculpture." Thomas's face flushed. He knew exactly what I meant. James had planted that maple the year Thomas was born, tending it meticulously through the seasons. It had been a living symbol of our family's growth, with its graceful branches and stunning fall colors. Now it was gone, replaced by an abstract stone arrangement that Sophia had seen in an architectural magazine. "Mom, we're just trying to maintain the property value. It's important for all of us." "Is it?" I asked, genuinely curious now. "And who exactly benefits from that increased value in your mind?" Neither answered. Later that evening, back in the pool house, I pulled out my financial records. Years of meticulous documentation, a habit James had instilled in me during our 4 decades of marriage. There they were, property tax payments, insurance premiums, utility bills, maintenance costs, all paid from my accounts. Even the landscaper that Sophia insisted on hiring, after firing our longtime gardener Manuel, who had tended our gardens for 15 years, was paid through my automatic withdrawals. I had funded everything while they redecorated, renovated, and reminded me to text before coming over. I opened another file, this one containing the loan agreement from 3 years ago when Thomas's startup had faltered. He had come to me, desperate and embarrassed, needing $75,000 to keep the business afloat until a new investor came through. "It's just temporary, Mom," he had said. "I'll pay you back as soon as we close this next round." I had written the check without hesitation. What mother wouldn't help her child? But James, always the pragmatist, had insisted years earlier that I never loan family money without paperwork. "Love them completely," he'd said, "but do business properly." So I had drawn up a loan agreement. Thomas had signed it without reading it closely, too relieved by the lifeline to pay attention to the details. The details that included a promissory note secured by his interest in any property we shared. The investor never materialized. The startup eventually folded. The loan was never repaid. I held the agreement in my hands now, reading through its clear language. Thomas had likely forgotten it existed. Or perhaps he assumed I had forgotten. Next to the loan agreement was a notebook where I'd been calculating figures for weeks. Property values in our neighborhood, the equity in the house, the potential proceeds from a sale, minus capital gains taxes. The numbers were substantial. Outside, I could hear the faint sounds of one of Sophia's dinner parties. Laughter, music, the clink of expensive wine glasses. I was never invited to those. Too boring, perhaps. Too reminiscent of the past they were trying to redecorate away. I smiled faintly as I looked at the figures again. My son and daughter-in-law might be the ones hosting parties in my house, but I was still the one paying for the privilege. At least for now. I couldn't get into my own house. The keypad blinked red 3 times. Access denied. I stood on the back porch of the main house, a basket of freshly harvested herbs from my small garden balanced on my hip. For years, even after moving to the pool house, I had supplied the kitchen with rosemary, thyme, and basil from the herb garden I still maintained. It was a small connection to the home I had built, to the kitchen where I had taught Thomas to make his grandmother's spaghetti sauce. A kitchen that now featured gleaming appliances I wasn't allowed to touch, and imported marble countertops that Sophia worried I might chip. I punched in the code again. 0417. Thomas's birthday. The code we'd used for years. Red light. Denied. I tried once more, thinking perhaps I'd made a mistake. Red light. A sharper beep this time. Final warning. I stood there, the fragrant herbs in my basket releasing their scent in the warm afternoon air. Through the glass door, I could see the kitchen, spotless and staged like a magazine photo shoot. No one was home. Thomas and Sophia were both at work. I set the basket down on the step and walked back to the pool house. Inside, I picked up my phone and called Thomas. "Hey, Mom," he answered, the sounds of his busy office in the background. "Everything okay?" "The house code seems to have changed," I said simply. A pause. "Oh, right. Didn't Sophia tell you? We upgraded to a new security system. It sends alerts to our phones." "No, she didn't mention it." Another pause. "Sorry about that. The new code is 2209, Sophia's birthday. I wrote it down, though something inside me shifted, a final tumbler falling into place. "Thanks," I said. "I was bringing some herbs from the garden." "That's nice, Mom. Listen, I've got to run to a meeting. We'll catch up soon, okay?" He hung up before I could respond. I sat at my small desk, staring at the paper where I'd written the new code. It was just 4 digits, but it represented something far deeper. My son had erased me from the daily security routine of my own home. My birthday, March 11th, was no longer relevant. That evening, I received a text from Sophia. "Sorry about the code mix-up. Meant to tell you in person. BTW, please don't leave anything on the kitchen counters. We have a photo shoot for Home and Garden next week. No question about whether I still wanted to share my herbs." No acknowledgement that I might have felt locked out of my own home. Just a request to keep my contributions out of sight. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked to my bookshelf and pulled out the leather-bound journal James had given me on our last anniversary before his heart attack. I hadn't written in it yet, unable to face the blank pages without him. But tonight, I had something to say. Today, I couldn't enter my own home, I wrote, and I realized it stopped being my home long ago. The words flowed after that, all the small indignities, the growing realization that I had become a footnote in the narrative of my own life, the tightness in my chest when I overheard Sophia tell a visitor, "We're looking into assisted living options. It would be so much better for her." 3 hours later, the journal was half filled and my decision was made. I closed the book and placed it in my bedside drawer. Then I pulled out my phone and searched for a number I hadn't called in years. Eleanor Santos, the attorney who had handled James's estate. It was after hours, but I sent an email. "Need to discuss property options, available to meet this week. Discretion essential." Her response came within minutes. "Available tomorrow at 10, my office or coffee shop of your choice." I replied quickly, "Coffee shop. Somewhere outside our neighborhood." Then I opened my laptop and navigated to the real estate section of my bookmarks. I had been tracking property values in our area for months, watching as homes like mine were snapped up by young tech executives and foreign investors. The housing market was at a historic high point. The timing couldn't be better. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. From there, I could see the main house illuminated against the evening sky, the house that had been my home for 30 years, the house that now held a security code I had to write down to remember. Some might call what I was planning revenge. I preferred to think of it as restoration. "Let me be clear about this, Margaret," Eleanor said, stirring her latte with precise movements. "You are the sole owner of the property. There's no co-ownership, no right of survivorship, nothing that would prevent you from selling." We sat in a corner table of a coffee shop 15 miles from my neighborhood, far enough that we wouldn't run into anyone who might report back to Thomas or Sophia. Eleanor Santos hadn't changed much in the 5 years since she had handled James's estate. Still sharp-eyed, direct, with reading glasses perched on top of her silver bob. She had been James's attorney for decades, and mine by extension. "And the pool house?" I asked. "Part of the same parcel, same deed, same owner." She tapped her tablet screen. "You." I sipped my tea, letting this confirmation settle over me. Despite knowing the truth, part of me had wondered if there was something I had missed or forgotten. Some legal maneuver that had transferred ownership without my knowledge. "What about the loan?" I asked. "The one to Thomas for his business." Eleanor pulled up another document on her tablet. "The promissory note is still valid. It was properly executed, notarized, and the default provisions are clear. He pledged his interest in the property as security, but since he has no legal interest in the property, what it effectively means is that you have a claim against him for the full amount." "And if I were to sell the property?" "You could use the proceeds however you wish. You could forgive the loan, pay it back to yourself from the proceeds, or maintain it as a separate obligation." She set her glasses down. "Margaret, legally speaking, you hold all the cards here. The question is what you want to do with them." What did I want? The question had been circling in my mind for weeks. "I want my dignity back," I said finally, "and I want Thomas to understand the consequences of treating me like an afterthought." Eleanor nodded, not judging, simply acknowledging. "Then let's discuss your options." For the next hour, we outlined a strategy. Eleanor recommended setting up an LLC to provide an additional layer of privacy during the process. She suggested working with a real estate agent who specialized in private, off-market listings. "You'll want to move quickly but quietly," she advised. "The moment they get wind of this, they might try to create obstacles." "What kind of obstacles?" "Emotional ones mostly. Guilt trips, family pressure, perhaps even questioning your competence. It happens more often than you'd think when older parents make financial decisions their adult children don't approve of." I thought of the brochure for the senior living facility, the change security code, the way they talked about me when they thought I couldn't hear. "I'm familiar with the technique," I said dryly. As our meeting concluded, Eleanor handed me a business card. Vanessa Reed, top-notch real estate agent, very discreet. Tell her I sent you. I tucked the card into my purse. How soon can we set up the LLC? I can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow. We'll use your maiden name, Wilson Properties LLC. It won't raise any flags if someone happens to see it. Outside the coffee shop, Eleanor surprised me with a quick hug. James would be proud of you standing up for yourself, she said. He always said you were stronger than you looked. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. Thank you, Eleanor. That afternoon, I called Vanessa Reed and arranged to meet her the following day. Then I drove to the bank where James and I had maintained our safe deposit box for decades. Inside the private viewing room, I opened the small metal box and removed several items: the original property deed, our marriage certificate, and a small leather pouch containing the jewelry James had given me over the years. Pieces I had stopped wearing after moving to the pool house, afraid they would somehow disappear like my writing desk. Also in the box was a letter James had written to me, to be opened after his death. I had read it countless times in the years since his passing, drawing strength from his words. Today, one passage stood out. Remember that you deserve to be treated with respect, Maggie. Don't let anyone, not even our Thomas, make you feel less than the extraordinary woman you are. Our son is a good man, but he may not always make good choices. Stand firm when you need to. I'm counting on you to be your own advocate. James had always seen more clearly than I had. Back at the pool house, I created a new email account using my maiden name. Then I began researching condominiums in Mapleton Heights, a quiet community about 20 minutes away, known for its gardens and proximity to the art museum I had always wanted to visit more often. On my notepad, I began a list titled Next Chapter. At the top, I wrote, "A place that's truly mine." For the first time in months, I felt something other than sadness or resentment. I felt hopeful. "You've maintained immaculate records," Vanessa Reed said, clearly impressed as she reviewed the documents spread across her office desk. Property tax statements for the past decade, insurance policies, utility bills, home improvement receipts, maintenance records, all meticulously organized and clearly demonstrating one fact: I had been the sole financial contributor to the property's upkeep since James passed away. James believed in documentation, I explained. He always said memories fade, but paper remembers. Vanessa nodded, setting aside a folder containing the most recent property assessment. These will be helpful for potential buyers to see the care that's gone into the home. And speaking of buyers, I've already identified 3 who might be interested in an off-market purchase. All pre-qualified, all looking for exactly this type of property in your neighborhood. How quickly could we move? I asked. With your level of preparation and documentation, we could have offers within a week, closing within 30 days after that, assuming no complications. No complications. We both knew what that meant. No interference from Thomas and Sophia. I'd like to proceed, I said firmly. Vanessa smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. I thought you might. I've already drafted the listing agreement. Private, confidential, exclusive to my agency. As I signed the paperwork, I felt a curious lightness. This wasn't impulsive or emotional. This was strategic, deliberate, the culmination of months of careful thought and documentation. That evening, I returned to the pool house and pulled out the small voice recorder I had purchased online last week. James had used a similar device in his medical practice to dictate notes. This one was smaller, more discreet, designed to capture conversations clearly even from a distance. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but I needed to protect myself. Tomorrow was the monthly dinner Thomas and Sophia hosted, the obligatory family meal where I was expected to listen appreciatively as they discussed their latest renovation plans for my home. I needed to document their true intentions and attitudes, not for any legal purpose, but for my own peace of mind. To confirm that I wasn't overreacting, that I wasn't imagining the subtle dismissals and preparations to move me out completely. The next morning, I visited the county recorder's office. I wanted to verify that no documents had been filed regarding my property without my knowledge. The clerk, a kind-faced woman named Brenda, helped me search the records. "Everything looks clean," she confirmed. "No liens, no easements, no unusual activity. The property is solely in your name, just as it has been since you and your husband purchased it in 1991. I thanked her and asked for certified copies of the deed and property tax records for the past 5 years. "Just updating my files," I explained when she raised an eyebrow at the request. "Smart woman," Brenda said with approval. "Too many people don't know what they own until there's a problem." On my way home, I stopped at a home improvement store and purchased a small fireproof safe, the kind that could be easily transported if needed. Inside it, I would store all the critical documents: the deed, the loan agreement with Thomas, the records of my financial contributions to the property's upkeep. By early afternoon, I had returned to the pool house and was organizing these documents when I received a text from Sophia. "Don't forget dinner tonight at 7. We have exciting news to share." I wondered what their exciting news might be. Another renovation I hadn't approved? Perhaps plans for that European vacation they'd been hinting about, funded, no doubt, by the money they saved living in a home for which they paid no mortgage, no property taxes, no major maintenance costs. Or perhaps they had finally decided it was time for me to move to Golden Sunset Village. I slipped the voice recorder into my cardigan pocket and checked that it was working properly. Then I took a deep breath and looked at my reflection in the small bathroom mirror. "You are not crazy," I told my reflection firmly. "You are not being unreasonable. You deserve better than this." My phone buzzed with another text from Sophia. "Oh, and can you wear something nice?" "Taking family photos for the holiday card." Family photos. How thoughtful to include me, the woman they were steadily erasing from her own home. I smiled grimly at my reflection. Tonight would be illuminating. One way or another, I would have the evidence I needed. Not for a court of law, but for the court of my own conscience. They went to Aspen for 5 days. I opened my home to potential buyers. The opportunity presented itself unexpectedly. Thomas and Sophia had been planning their ski trip for months, a last-minute winter getaway before the spring season at the resort ended. Sophia had talked of nothing else during our tense family dinner last week, showing me photos of the luxury chalet they had rented with another couple. "You'll be okay on your own, right, Margaret?" she had asked, not really concerned, just checking a box on her mental list. "Of course," I had replied. "I managed on my own for 3 years before you moved in." The comment had earned me a sharp look from Thomas, but Sophia had been too busy showing me pictures of the ski outfits she had purchased to notice the edge in my voice. The recorder in my pocket had captured everything that evening, including their exciting news, which turned out to be their decision to convert the upstairs guest bedroom into a home gym. "We're thinking Peloton, weights, maybe a yoga area," Sophia had explained over dessert. "It's such wasted space right now." That wasted space had been Thomas's childhood bedroom, later converted to a guest room where my sister stayed during her visits. Now it would become another showcase for Sophia's Instagram lifestyle. But the most revealing conversation had happened after dinner, when they thought I had left to use the restroom. The recorder had captured every word. "We need to talk to her about Golden Sunset soon," Sophia had said. "My friend Jen's mother-in-law loves it there, and they have a waiting list." "I know," Thomas had sighed. "It's just hard to bring up. She's so attached to this place. But it's getting ridiculous, Tom. She can't maintain that pool house forever, and we could use the space for your home office. Think about the tax write-off." "Let me find the right moment," Thomas had promised. "Maybe after we get back from Aspen. She'll be lonely while we're gone. Might make her more receptive to the idea of having people around all the time." I had returned to the dining room with a pleasant smile, saying nothing about what I had overheard. But inside, the last thread of hesitation had snapped. Now, 3 days into their Aspen vacation, I stood in the foyer of the main house, watching as Vanessa Reed guided a couple in their 40s through the living room. They looked exactly like the kind of buyers Vanessa had described. successful professionals seeking a prestigious address, with the financial means to make an all-cash offer. The original hardwood floors have been maintained beautifully, Vanessa was explaining, and the kitchen was renovated just 3 years ago. I followed at a distance, observing their reactions. The woman, Dr. Chen, according to the introductions, lingered by the bay windows in the living room. "The light in here is extraordinary," she remarked. Her husband, a composer named Adrian, was drawn to the acoustics of the dining room. "This space would be perfect for a grand piano," he mused. They were the third couple to tour the house today. The first had been pleasant but non-committal. The second had seemed more interested in what renovations they could do than in appreciating what was already there. But the Chens were different. They moved through the house with reverence, noticing details that even I had forgotten. The hand-carved moldings in the library, the way the afternoon light filtered through the stained glass accent window on the staircase landing. After the tour concluded, Vanessa and the Chens sat at the dining room table, the same table where Thomas and Sophia had discussed moving me to Golden Sunset while I was supposedly out of earshot. "As I mentioned," Vanessa said, "the owner is looking for a clean, straightforward transaction. Pre-approval for financing or proof of funds would be required with any offer." Dr. Chen nodded. "We've been pre-approved, but we're prepared to make a cash offer if it helps expedite the process." Her husband leaned forward.